They laughed right in my face at my retirement party. The people I had given everything to, my own children, my in-laws, mocking me like I was some joke. I stood there holding the envelope that would change everything while they whispered and snickered behind their fake smiles. You really think you're still important? My son sneered, clinking his glass as if to celebrate my downfall. My daughter rolled her eyes, exchanging looks with her husband, who barely hid his smirk. Even my so-called friends seemed to join in, pretending to be polite but clearly enjoying the spectacle. I felt a fire ignite inside me. All those years of sacrifice, love, and hard work dismissed in a single moment. But they didn't know the secret I carried that night. The one thing they could never steal from me, the truth, because inside that unassuming envelope was a check. Not just any check, but one for $2 million money I had saved quietly, hidden away from greedy eyes. Money that would expose their lies and force them to face what they truly were. I could see the confusion flicker across their faces as I pulled out the check and laid it on the table right in front of them. Suddenly, the laughter died down, the mocking stopped. You didn't think I'd be so careless, did you? I said quietly, voice steady but cold. That night was the turning point, the moment I stopped being their forgotten parent and started reclaiming what was rightfully mine. But the story didn't end there. This was only the beginning of a long, painful journey filled with betrayal, secrets, and hard lessons about family. The day of my retirement party should have been one of the happiest days of my life. After more than 3 decades of hard work, long hours, and sacrifices, I was finally stepping back. I imagined smiles, warm hugs, and words of gratitude. What I didn't expect was the cold, biting atmosphere that greeted me as soon as I walked through the door. I remember standing there, holding the invitation in my hand, looking around at the faces of my family. My son Mark was there, but instead of the proud smile I hoped for, he looked bored, scrolling through his phone like he was somewhere else. My daughter Lisa was whispering something to her husband, Peter, while throwing glances in my direction, the kind of looks that made my skin crawl. Even my in-laws, who always pretended to like me for appearances, seemed to wear fake smiles that didn't reach their eyes. I could feel their judgment, like I was an inconvenient relic about to be cast aside. When I gave my speech, my voice cracked slightly from the mix of nerves and sadness, but I spoke about my years of dedication and the dreams I still held. I thanked everyone for their support, hoping to soften the mood. But then Mark raised his glass and said, "Retirement, more like the end of your usefulness." The room fell silent for a second, and then a few guests chuckled nervously. Lisa laughed softly, adding, "Yeah, Dad, maybe now you'll stop getting in the way and finally let us handle things." Peter smirked, nodding in agreement. The sting of their words cut deeper than I expected. All the late nights, all the missed family dinners, reduced to a punchline at my own party. Yet I refused to break down in front of them. I held my head high and smiled, but inside, something shifted. I realized I wasn't invisible anymore, and I wasn't going to be pushed aside without a fight. As the party dragged on, I noticed an envelope sitting alone on the edge of the table. It wasn't addressed to anyone, just a plain white envelope with no markings. I didn't think much of it at first, but there was something about it that made my heart skip a beat. Was it a gift, a message, or perhaps a sign that this night wasn't going to end the way everyone expected? To understand why that night felt like the end of the world, you need to know the people around me. Those closest to me who should have stood by my side but instead tore me down. Let me start with my son, Mark. Mark is a complicated man. From a young age, he was always ambitious, hungry for success. I tried to support him the best I could, working long hours so he could have opportunities I never had. But over the years, something changed. The gratitude I expected never came. Instead, Mark grew distant, his ambition morphing into entitlement. He believed he deserved everything, our family home, the business, the inheritance, without earning a single thing. Mark's bitterness was only made worse by his wife, Jenna. Jenna has a way of slipping into a room and making everyone uncomfortable, her eyes constantly calculating, her smile always hiding something. She encouraged Mark's greed, whispering ideas about how they could take control, how they could force me to sign over everything. I never trusted her, but Mark seemed blind to it all. Then there's my daughter, Lisa. Lisa married Peter, a man who, on the surface, seemed charming and supportive, but I learned quickly that Peter's charm was just a mask for his own greed and manipulation. Lisa was caught in the middle, torn between loyalty to me and her husband's demands. She tried to keep the peace, but more often than not, she sided with Peter, perhaps out of fear or the desire for stability. Their family had their own plans for the future, plans that didn't include me. Lisa's parents, my in-laws, only made things worse. From the moment they stepped into our lives, they made it clear they didn't respect me. They criticized my decisions, undermined my authority, and constantly reminded me that I didn't fit into their idea of a successful family. Family gatherings felt like a minefield where every word could set off a fight. But amidst all this, there were a few people I could count on. My lawyer, Mr. Harris, has been my trusted advisor for years. A quiet, steady man, he knew more about our family's secrets than most. He handled my affairs with discretion and care. I trusted him to protect me, and the truth, my close friends were another source of strength. They didn't fully understand the tensions inside my family, but they offered a listening ear and a shoulder to lean on when things got tough. They reminded me I wasn't alone. On that night, as I looked around the room filled with people who should have loved and supported me, I realized how tangled our lives had become. The mix of family, in-laws, and friends created a web of loyalty and betrayal that was impossible to untangle. And lurking in the shadows of that web was the envelope I had noticed earlier, the one no one seemed to claim, the one I wasn't sure if I dared to open. Our family history wasn't simple. It was filled with layers of love, resentment, and unspoken tensions that had grown deeper with each passing year. If I'm honest, the cracks began long before that retirement party. Years of subtle betrayals that slowly eroded the trust I once had. Mark and Lisa grew up watching me work late into the night, juggling 2 jobs and sacrificing weekends just to keep our home afloat. I always thought they understood the price I paid, but as they grew older, I realized they saw things differently. To them, my hard work wasn't sacrifice. It was a weakness to be exploited. Mark had always wanted control, whether it was over the family business or the property. He pushed hard for me to sign papers transferring ownership, hinting that it was for the family's good. I resisted every time, sensing his greed. Lisa, on the other hand, was caught between loyalty to me and her husband, Peter, who was even more aggressive about taking control. Their plans were clear, but they cloaked them in promises of helping me relax and letting the younger generation take over. There were rumors swirling around town, too, whispers that I was losing my mind, that I'd be pressured into signing away everything. I'd heard the lies, that I didn't care about the family anymore, that I was reckless with our future. Those rumors weren't just painful, they were dangerous. The tension spilled over during family dinners. Mark and Peter would argue over financial decisions, each trying to outmaneuver the other, while Lisa tried to keep the peace. My in-laws sat quietly, their eyes cold and judgmental, silently rooting for me to fail. What hurt most wasn't the conflict itself, but the way I was slowly being erased, my opinions ignored, my voice drowned out by the noise of greed and ambition. I felt like a stranger in my own family. Despite all this, I kept my secrets close, especially the legal ones. I'd worked with Mr. Harris for years, quietly arranging my affairs so that if the worst happened, I could protect myself. I'd drafted wills, changed deeds, and hidden assets, all to keep control over what was mine. But I never imagined those secrets would explode into the open so suddenly. That night, when Mr. Harris handed me the envelope, inside was a copy of a secret will, one that no one in the family had ever seen, a will that named me as the sole beneficiary of a property, and a sum of money far beyond what anyone expected. The room went silent as I read the words aloud. Faces turned pale, the mockery faded. Suddenly, the game had changed. After the retirement party, things didn't get easier, they got worse. The mocking smiles and snide remarks didn't stay confined to that one night. Instead, they followed me into every conversation, every family gathering, every moment I tried to hold onto some sense of dignity. Mark became more brazen. At family dinners, he would interrupt me mid-sentence, making jokes at my expense. "Dad, maybe you should take up knitting or golf instead of wasting your time on that old house," he said one evening, laughter dripping from his words like poison. The others laughed nervously, unsure whether to join in or look away. Lisa's coldness was harder to swallow because it was quieter but just as sharp. She would agree with Peter's plans in hushed tones, then look at me with those sad, distant eyes. I could tell she was torn between loyalty to her family and the mother she once loved. But when Peter chimed in with his smooth, oily voice, "It's time to move on, for everyone's sake," I knew where her allegiance lay. Even Jenna, Mark's wife, who barely concealed her disdain for me, began pressing Mark to get things moving. "You need to make him see it's better for everyone if he signs over the house now," she whispered one afternoon. I overheard her because I was closer than she thought, and her words felt like a dagger twisting in my chest. I started to see the pattern. This wasn't about respect or gratitude. It was about money, control, and greed. My family saw me as an obstacle to be removed rather than the parent who had built everything with sweat and tears. One afternoon, Mark confronted me in my study, slamming a folder on the desk. "Dad, you need to sign these papers. It's about the house and the business. You're retired now. You don't need to worry about this stuff anymore. Let us handle it." I looked at the documents: property transfers, power of attorney, blank checks. The truth hit me hard. They wanted to strip me of everything, and they were trying to do it while I was vulnerable, hoping I'd give in, but I wasn't ready to give up, not yet. The conversation grew heated. Mark's voice rose, frustration bleeding into anger. "You're being stubborn for no reason. We're trying to help you." "No," I said firmly. "You're trying to take what's mine." His face twisted with fury. "You don't belong here anymore." The words hung in the air like a curse. At that moment, I realized this wasn't just a family dispute. It was a betrayal. The note wasn't just a threat. It was a warning. It said, "Sign the papers or lose everything." The handwriting was unmistakable. Mark wanted to break me, to force me into handing over what I had spent my life building. Days later, I found myself cornered in my own home. Mark, Jenna, and even Peter showed up unannounced, armed with more paperwork and determined expressions. They weren't asking any more. They were demanding. "Dad, this is for your own good," Lisa said softly, but her eyes avoided mine. "We just want what's best for the family." I wanted to believe her, but the truth was clear. It was about control, not care. Jenna took the lead, her voice cold and businesslike. "If you don't sign, we'll have no choice but to take legal action to protect our interests." I shook my head, heart pounding. "I won't sign under pressure. These documents aren't just papers. They're my life." Mark smirked. "You're old, Dad. You don't understand the game anymore. Just sign and save yourself the trouble." They brought a notary, an official witness, hoping to make the signing unavoidable. I sat there, pen in hand, feeling trapped between fear and defiance. But then, a knock at the door stopped everything. It was Mr. Harris, my lawyer. He carried a thick folder and an unreadable expression. I heard what's going on. He said quietly, "You don't have to sign anything you don't want to." I felt a surge of relief mixed with anger. Relief because I wasn't alone. Anger because this had gone too far. Mr. Harris pulled out documents, new wills, property deeds, and legal protections I had arranged secretly over the years. "These papers will protect you from this kind of pressure. You have more control than you realize." Mark's face twisted in frustration. Jenna's lips pressed into a tight line. Peter's eyes flicked nervously around the room. For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of hope. The tension in the house grew thicker with every passing day. Behind polite smiles and carefully chosen words, a storm was brewing. I soon realized that the battle wasn't just about papers or money. It was about the web of lies and deception my own family had spun around me. Mark and Peter started whispering in corners, pretending to plan family events or business meetings. But I knew those conversations weren't innocent. They spread rumors to neighbors, friends, even my closest acquaintances, trying to paint me as unstable, someone who couldn't be trusted to manage my own affairs. One day, a friend called me, concerned and confused. "I heard you're planning to sell the family home without telling anyone," she said. My heart sank. The lies were multiplying, twisting reality into something unrecognizable. At family dinners, Lisa's eyes darted away whenever I asked direct questions. "I caught her on the phone once, telling someone, 'We have to make sure Dad signs soon. It's for his own good.' But it was clear it wasn't about what was good for me. The worst moment came when I discovered a forged letter, supposedly from me, granting power of attorney to Mark and Peter. My signature had been copied and pasted onto a document I'd never seen. It was a betrayal so deep it felt like a physical blow. I confronted Mark, holding the forged letter in my trembling hands. His face hardened, and for a moment, I saw no remorse. "We're just trying to protect what's ours," he said coldly. "You don't understand the stakes. The family I had trusted, the children I had loved, had turned their backs on me. They lied, manipulated, and conspired, all while pretending to care. But beneath their deceit, I held on to one truth. I was not powerless. I had the law on my side, and I had Mr. Harris, the one person who refused to let them win. As I sat alone that night, clutching the forged letter, I realized the fight wasn't just about money. It was about reclaiming my dignity and my life. After the long days filled with tension and heartbreak, it was Mr. Harris who finally brought me a glimmer of hope. One afternoon he arrived unannounced, holding a thick, sealed envelope with my name written in familiar handwriting. "Mr. Harris," I said, my voice wavering, "what is this?" He looked at me solemnly. "This is something you need to see. It's a will, one that's been hidden for years. It changes everything." I took the envelope with trembling hands and carefully opened it. Inside was a document I had completely forgotten about, a will drafted in secret years ago when I first sensed the growing greed in the family. The will named me as the sole owner of the family property and the executor of all assets. It explicitly stated that no one could make claims without my consent. It was a legal safeguard I had put in place, but somehow the rest of the family never knew about it. As I read the words aloud, my heart pounded. This was the proof I needed to fight back. The hidden will was my shield, the key to reclaiming control. Mr. Harris explained, "Because this will was never revealed, your family believed they could push you around. Now, with this in hand, you have the legal right to stop their plans." The weight of years of betrayal suddenly felt lighter. For the first time, I felt powerful again, but the discovery also meant trouble. Mark and the others would never accept this quietly. They'd fight back harder. Still, armed with the truth, I was ready to face whatever came next. The secret will gave me hope, but Mr. Harris wasn't done yet. A few days later, he invited me to his office with another surprising revelation. Something even more unexpected about the family property. He spread out a series of documents on his desk, pointing to one that caught my attention immediately, the property deed. "This deed," he said quietly, "shows that ownership isn't just in your name alone, despite what Mark and Lisa might think." I frowned. "What do you mean? I've always been told it's a joint family property." Mr. Harris shook his head. "Officially, the property was transferred into your name alone nearly 10 years ago. Your children and their spouses have no legal claim to it without your permission." The news hit like a thunderbolt. All this time, they had been acting like they owned the house, making demands and threats, assuming they had rights they never actually had. "That's why they've been pushing you to sign over control." Mr. Harris continued, "They believed if they could get your signature, they could claim ownership, but legally, you're the sole owner." I felt a surge of relief and anger all at once. How dare they assume they could just take what was mine? But the discovery also raised questions. How had they been so bold to try and force me out? How far would they go to grab what they thought was theirs? Mr. Harris leaned in. "There's one more thing you need to know. The deed also includes a clause that if anyone tries to challenge your ownership without your consent, they face serious legal consequences." I stared at the paper, feeling a new sense of power course through me. The family had underestimated me, and now the truth was on my side. With the secret will and the property deed in hand, I thought I had uncovered all the family's hidden truths. But Mr. Harris had one final surprise, a discovery so unexpected, it felt like the last piece of the puzzle snapping into place. "Amir," he said gently, "there's one more thing." He reached into his briefcase and pulled out an envelope, thicker and heavier than the first. "This is a check, a bank check for $2 million. It was tucked away in a safe deposit box under your name, untouched for years." I stared at it in disbelief. $2 million. Money I had saved quietly, in secret, to protect myself and my future. This money was never mentioned because the family didn't know it existed. Mr. Harris explained. It's yours legally and without dispute. For years, I'd hidden that check, knowing the greed in my family would try to get their hands on it. Now, with everything revealed, I held proof of my financial independence and strength. That night, I decided to bring the check to the family meeting. The same people who had mocked my retirement, laughed at my struggles, and tried to force me out, would finally see that I wasn't as powerless as they thought. As I laid the check on the table, the room fell silent. The mocking smiles disappeared, replaced by shock and disbelief. You thought you could take everything, I said calmly, but this is mine. The eyes that once mocked me now stared in silence as the truth settled like a heavy fog. That moment was a turning point. The veil of greed was lifted, and the family saw me in a new light, a parent who had been betrayed but was fighting back. After the shock of the $2 million check settled in, something inside me shifted. I realized I couldn't stay quiet anymore. The time for hiding, for accepting disrespect, had passed. I needed to stand up, not just for myself, but for my dignity, my legacy, and my peace of mind. I called a family meeting. Not the kind where we'd gather to pretend everything was fine, but one where the truth would be spoken, no matter how painful. The room filled with familiar faces. Mark, Lisa, Peter, Jenna, even the in-laws. Their expressions ranged from smug confidence to thinly veiled anxiety. I took a deep breath and looked each of them in the eye. I know what you've been trying to do, I said firmly, trying to push me aside to take control of what I've built, but I'm here to tell you it's not going to happen. Mark scoffed, but I didn't back down. The will, the deed, the money. I have it all. You can't bully me into signing away my life. Lisa's eyes flickered with something I hadn't seen before. Maybe regret, maybe guilt. Peter shifted uncomfortably. Jenna's smile vanished. I'm done being silent. I continued, if any of you think you can threaten me, manipulate me, or lie your way into my possessions, you're wrong. This family means more than money, but respect. That's something you've lost. For a moment, silence filled the room. Then Mark erupted. You don't know what you're doing. You're making a mistake. No, I replied calmly. You made the mistake the moment you started treating me like I was nothing. The confrontation was exhausting, but necessary. It was the first time I reclaimed my power in years, and while I knew this wouldn't magically fix everything, it was a start. The moment I stood up and laid everything on the table, the cracks in the family grew into chasms. Mark and Peter, once confident and cocky, suddenly looked vulnerable. Like predators caught off guard, they didn't take my defiance well. The days that followed were filled with cold shoulders, sharp words, and silent dinners. Invitations stopped coming, phone calls went unanswered. It was like a wall had risen between me and the people I once called my children. Lisa, caught in the middle, tried to mediate, but even her efforts felt strained. I could see the tension in her eyes. The guilt of betrayal mixed with the pain of loyalty divided. Mark's bitterness turned into bitterness that wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about pride and power slipping through his fingers. He started spreading rumors, twisting stories, trying to turn friends and neighbors against me. Jenna, always the schemer, kept pushing Mark to keep fighting, to wear me down, but I had learned their game well. I stopped responding to their provocations and focused on building a life away from their toxic shadows. One afternoon, I got a message from an old friend I hadn't spoken to in years. I'm sorry for everything you're going through, she wrote. You don't deserve this. Her words felt like a balm to my wounded spirit. Despite the isolation and heartbreak, I began to find peace in small moments, quiet mornings, walks in the park, time spent with friends who truly cared. Slowly, the weight of betrayal started to lift. When Lisa reached out, I was cautious. After all that had happened, the lies, the betrayal, I wasn't sure if forgiveness was even possible. But deep down, I missed the daughter I once knew. So I agreed to meet her. Our conversation was awkward at first, filled with silence and unspoken pain. But slowly, she began to open up. I'm sorry, Mom, she said, her voice trembling. I got caught up in their plans. I didn't want to hurt you, but I didn't know how to say no. I listened, tears welling up. It wasn't easy to hear how much damage had been done, but it was a start. Rebuilding our relationship wasn't instant or perfect. It took time, patience, and honest conversations. But it reminded me that sometimes, even the deepest wounds can heal. Beyond family, I began to focus on myself. I took up new hobbies, reconnected with old friends, and spent more time outdoors. For the first time in years, I felt free from the constant tension that had weighed me down. Financially, with the protection of the will, deed, and that unexpected $2 million check, I was secure. I didn't need to worry about greedy relatives anymore. I could finally live life on my own terms. But the biggest lesson I learned was this: respect matters more than money. Without respect, no fortune can bring peace. The family drama had tested me in ways I never imagined, but it also taught me strength, resilience, and the true meaning of love. Looking back, the betrayal cut deeper than any financial loss ever could. It wasn't just about money or property. It was about trust broken by the very people I called family. For years, I had believed love would protect us from greed. I was wrong. Betrayal leaves scars that don't always show on the surface. It's the quiet moments when you realize someone you trusted doesn't have your back. It's the sting of conversations behind your back, the whispered plans, the false smiles that hide real intentions. I remember the nights I lay awake, wondering where I went wrong. Was it something I said? Something I didn't do? The questions haunted me. But eventually, I understood that their actions were never really about me. They were about their own fears, insecurities, and desires. The hardest part was forgiving, not just them, but myself. Forgiving myself for expecting things to be different. Forgiving myself for staying silent too long. But forgiveness was also the key to healing. It allowed me to let go of bitterness and reclaim my peace. I realized that betrayal can either break you or make you stronger. For me, it became a lesson in resilience. It showed me who I really was, someone who deserved respect and love, no matter what. One of the hardest lessons I learned through all of this was that respect is worth far more than any inheritance or money. It's easy to be blinded by dollars and property titles, but without respect, those things are empty. I saw how greed changed the people I once loved. It made them forget kindness, empathy, and the simple human decency we all deserve. Money became a weapon, a tool to manipulate and control. But no amount of money can buy respect. It has to be earned. When Mark and Lisa pushed me to sign away my rights, it wasn't just about the property. It was about control and power. They didn't respect my years of hard work or the sacrifices I made. They saw me as a stepping stone to their own success, not as a person. But through all the pain, I learned that respect starts with yourself. It's standing up for what's right, even when the odds are against you. It's demanding to be treated with dignity, regardless of age, status, or wealth. I also learned that sometimes the people who disrespect you the most are the ones closest to you. It's painful, but it's also a chance to reevaluate relationships and set boundaries. In the end, respect became my true inheritance, the legacy I chose to protect and nurture. Money can come and go, but respect is something that lasts, shaping how we live and how we are remembered. As I close this chapter of my life, I want to leave you with one powerful truth. Respect matters more than money, and now they know it too. I faced betrayal, lies, and greed from the people I trusted most. I was pushed aside and treated like I was nothing. But I fought back, not just to protect my possessions, but to reclaim my dignity. Money can be stolen, inherited, or lost. But respect is earned, and once it's gone, it's nearly impossible to get back. My story isn't just about inheritance or family drama. It's about standing up for yourself when those you love fail you. It's about finding strength in the darkest moments and refusing to be broken. If there's one lesson I want you to take away, it's this: never let anyone, not even family, make you feel worthless. Your worth is beyond dollars and possessions. And to those watching who might be facing their own battles, whether it's betrayal, greed, or disrespect, remember this: you have the power to change your story. Protect your dignity. Fight for your respect. Because in the end, that is what truly matters. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it inspires you to stand tall and never settle for less than you deserve.